Welcome to the Zapata brand. And now, your host, George Zapata.
We're going to try this again. Last time we tried this, the audio got all jacked up. And that was my fault.
That's all right.
We wanted you to be the first guest. Didn't pan out that way. Here we are now. We're going to get it done the right way. So when we talk Berwick football in this area, there's about three top of the food chain. You go from George Curry. 2 or 3, you could do a toss-up. It's either Bo Orlando, Ron Paulus. Today, I have Bo Orlando. This is the second time we've had it. Now, I only say that because I don't. There's different eras. One's a quarterback, one defensive back, but you were a quarterback at the time. Now you're at the athletic director here at the Berwick Area School District. But what I'd like you to do right now, just if people who don't know you, and we have a lot of younger people that are on in the New Jersey area that listen to it.
Right.
They don't know what a big deal you are here in this area, how you got to where you were.
Right.
So if you can, just give us a brief rundown of who you are, where you came from, and what have you here.
All right, I'm Bo Orlando. I was born and raised in Berwick, Pennsylvania, small town in Berwick, and played football through, like you said, for the great George Curry. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, that was like the main thing to do here in Berwick. Played quarterback and a little defensive back, and got a scholarship to play at West Virginia. 1984, went to West Virginia, got redshirted my first year, played a little bit my next 2 years, and I started my last 2 years, and got drafted in the 6th rounds by the Houston Oilers. Played 6 years with the Oilers, went to San Diego for a year, Cincinnati for 2 years, and then I retired as a Pittsburgh Steeler in 1998. I had 10 years in.
So 10 years in the NFL after your career. So when you grew up, if you give me the logistics of your family. Now, you grew up in a large family. Mm-hmm. How many kids?
We have there were 7 of us.
Seven
five
kids.
5 boys, 2 girls. Yep.
5 boys, 2 girls. You are which one?
I'm next to the youngest.
Next to the youngest, okay. Yeah. And your father passed away early.
Early. I was 54 years old. I was 15 years old when he passed
15.
away. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So at that time, obviously very rough time. And I will say this. I had a conversation with someone who knew your father. Mm-hmm. He worked at Wise Potato Chips. He
had a bar. Earlier, he had a bar in Chick-Shinny. He had a bar called the Mountain Inn, and then the flood came in 72. And, then he came back to Berwick, and, he was always lived in Berwick. And he worked at Wise Potato Chips. He did a bread route for Delos. And, back in the day, you had 2-3 jobs. You just, the father went out and worked, and the mother went home. And
your mom never worked.
Mom never worked till my dad passed away.
Yeah. But she had to take care of 7 kids. So that's a little bit of a thing. That would be tough at any point. Okay, so now when you first growing up there, you lived on LaSalle Street or Monroe Street. Monroe Street there. What was the culture there as far as football or sports go? Because it seems to me like at a small town, I'm from a bigger city,
right?
And I was shocked at how many athletes come out of this little area. It's similar to like wrestling is in Ohio or even in Benton and places around East End here. The amount of talent that's come through this little town of Berwick, where you led the charge there at some point. How was the culture growing up as far as kids wise?
Well, it was I grew up across the street from a park, which I was telling someone the other day. I think when we got up, we weren't allowed to be in a house during the day like the kids are in now on the computers on their phones. I mean, we weren't allowed. I mean, we got up, we were out till dawn of dusk. You came in you had breakfast and you were outside playing all day long. Came and eat lunch or get a drink, and you were back out. And and it was safe then. You didn't have to lock your doors. I mean, we rode our bikes everywhere. I mean, my mom and dad never gave me a ride to practice anywhere. It was my baseball, Little League baseball. I would ride my bike probably a mile or 2 down to my coach's house. Me and TJ Sassini and Dave Reagan, and go to Tony Scala's house, and then we'd go up to North Berwick and we'd practice. They'd drive us home, and then we'd ride our bikes back home. Football practice down at Fowler Field, the baseball field. I had all my pads on, riding my bike with my helmet on my handlebars going, and then Ralphie DeFebo would run the heck out of us and up and down the hills, and you'd be there for 2-3 hours and have to get on my bike, ride back home, and but that was just the thing, and around our area in the west end of Berwick, it was very, very ethnic areas. And around where we lived, there were a lot of Italians. There was now my mom's one of, I was one of 7, but my mom's one of 14. She was a Spezzoletti.
Holy cow.
And all but 2 lived within probably 3 blocks of my house. So when they all got married and everything, they moved out and bought houses. So
And they lived there.
They lived there, and it was a large.
Even when they were married.
Well, so what happened was we were living on LaSalle Street when I wasn't born yet, and then my grandfather passed away. I think it was in March, and I was born in April. And then when I was born, they were telling my mom was the youngest out of the 14, and they had a big double house that everybody was raised in, the house that we're in now. And they were like, Dolores, you and Jimmy, you go down there and raise your kids. And then my grandmother was still living.
Okay.
My grandmother lived till she was 95. So we used both sides, but we used all the bedrooms upstairs. But the one side was my grand's, and then the other side was ours. So it was a little tight. And the uncles came over. We built a big 20 by 40 screened-in porch. So every single night, my aunts and uncles that lived in the area, which were -3 with 11 of them, would come over for coffee every night between I don't know what it was,
Probably after the
7
lotto went
o'clock
off.
to 9 or 6:30, and. I remember on the weekends trying to get some privacy. We were watching Lawrence Welk, and I was watching Hee Haw. Like I, grew up because because back then you had one TV.
Yeah, one
If
TV.
you were lucky, you had one in upstairs, but it was in your mom and dad's room. If you wanted to go, no one had anything, and you had the box fans. You didn't have any air conditioning, so I was telling someone the other day too as well. I said, what our remote controls were? They had the UHF. They had 10 stations on there, and the remote controls were like, Joey, get up and turn on channel 7. So you had to watch what your father wanted to watch and everything.
That was it. There was no. It's definitely different than what it was that it is now. Not to say that I think there's just we've gone so far to a different direction where it's almost like the inmates run the asylum, but it didn't work that way.
Absolutely.
Back then when you were going. So when was your first experience as far as football goes? Or you were an athlete across the board?
Yes.
Track, basketball, baseball,
I played them all in high school until I played baseball my sophomore year, and then I ran track my junior and senior year. But kind of played them all, kind of spread. But I always played basketball, and I always played football. But baseball, back in the day, going up through Little League, through Teen League, we had a team from Berwick that was at the. I don't know if they were at the. I don't think they made it to the Little League World Series. They made it to the finals.
It was one game prior.
One game prior, and we always went far. We were in the States number of times. I mean, and we went to when I was 13. They had the first year they had 13-year All-Stars. The only farthest we can go was states. We won the state. And Berwick was a baseball town. I mean, Berwick was before George Curry and everything. Berwick was a big baseball town. A lot of guys didn't play in high schools. And when George came, then guys started going over to football.
So that brings me to my next question. So you played sports through your whole career, and then all of a sudden George Curry comes in. What year did he become?
He came here in 1972. I was 6 years old.
Oh, okay. I thought that he wasn't. Okay, so you didn't concentrate on football alone.
No, and it was and I guess Berwick when he first came here was a little bit of culture change, so he went through the years, and I think it was probably the best year they had was 1977 when Johnny Pruitt was a running back. Johnny ended up going to Syracuse, and they won the Eastern Conference, and then they had a year after that was a little rough, and then 1981, my sophomore year, we had Keith Seeley, Doug Hindleiter, Mike West went to Temple. We had a lot of good players. We won the Eastern Conference. Back then, the state championship didn't start till 1988. So the farthest you can go is the Eastern Conference, and we'd win it every year. I think I lost from 7th grade to my senior year. I lost one game. I lost my junior year. We lost to Coughlin in the playoffs. I lost one game.
And they didn't have state tournaments at that time.
Right.
So it was just, that's it, you're done.
Absolutely.
Obviously, things have changed quite a bit since then.
A little bit, yeah.
Financially even.
Yeah.
PIAA. It's a bunch
I mean,
of
it was totally different. I mean, you didn't have things to do like the kids do today. I mean, you didn't have phones. And
No,
I mean, you were outside, and like I said, I lived across the street from a park. We had a baseball field, we had a basketball court, and we had a football field. So whatever season it was, we were out there playing. And even watching like NFL, like I couldn't sit still to save my life. So like we would watch, part of the game, and then we'd be out playing.
Right.
And saying you're, such and such. But when you were little and Berwick started getting really big, I mean, everybody's, realization of and the dreams want to play in the NFL, but you wanted to be a Berwick Bulldog. I mean, George Curry built such a tradition here. that you wanted to be a Berwick Bulldog. You looked up to Berwick Bulldogs because they were in town. I mean, they were touchable. They weren't as like the NFL guys.
So that's the 81 when he started coming in.
Around 80, 81, they started winning. Yeah.
Right. Excuse me. So then when your father had passed, now you're coming into high school at this time in 81, you're a sophomore or whatever. Was George kind of like, now you were small at that time.
I was very, very small, yeah.
So now you have a guy coming into your life like a George Curry. He's a stern leader.
Right.
But he is still a leader.
Right.
Your father out of the picture at the time, but you had your relatives and your family. Was that where you kind of turned and said, you know what, I think this might be something I'm good at?
Well, I can always, I always tell people why I was so quick and fast is because, like, my brothers, when you when you grow up across the street from Park, Stitch, I call him Stitch Malcurie, my neighbor, were a little bit older than me, but we always ran together. So all our brothers were out in the park, and they would make us do, like, obstacle courses, go fight this kid, go fight. Like, so it was just, like, you just had to be tough in that neighborhood. You were always, whether it was fighting some other kid or your brother's beating down on you, everybody beat on you. Beat on the younger kids, and we cut our beatings. And I ran fast because, when my dad chased you or your brothers chased you, I mean, you ran out of the house, I ran in the park and running zigzags, and, that's how I learned.
It was usually with a belt.
That's usually with a belt. My dad with the belt, my brothers with their fist,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So then what made you turn to, well, now, when you were a sophomore, were you starting? Or no?
Back then, you very, very rarely saw a sophomore start. I didn't start to my junior year. I started one game, and it was in the playoffs, and I was scared out of my life. We were playing, who was it? North. Oh my God, not North Schuylkill.
North Pocono?
North Pocono.
Okay.
In Dictonana, we played him, and they had this kid. They had this kid going to Temple. He was huge. He did cut off shirts. I mean, he was 6'3". I mean, I think his name is Demnowski, or he was a linebacker. Went to Temple, and they had these fast guys and everything. And here I am at I'm a sophomore. I'm probably 5'7", probably about 113, 14 pounds. If that, or maybe 120. And but you had such a tradition though. You couldn't let the guys down. Like back then, we had we would have varsity practice and JV practice on the other end. You'd have 70, 80, 90 kids on a football team. And there were some kids that didn't play, but it was just an honor to be on a team, and they would stay on that team and scout team and whatever, because everybody couldn't. You have 70, 80 guys. You have 7th and 8th grade, and then you had freshman ball, and then you had JVs and varsity, and everybody didn't play. There wasn't enough guys to play there. So you had to kind of like sort of earn your keep.
Okay, so now let's say you're 120. We'll give you 120.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you 120.
Soaking wet, yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to give you like 5'8" at this time, okay? So when did you make that turn a little bit? Were you always a quarterback? So now you're going to your junior year.
Right.
We're just going to keep going as we get to college.
Right. Well, like I said, I was the quarterback up 7th and 8th grade. And I said because I was little, but I was fast. I mean, I was more quicker than I was fast, and I always played quarterback. But I had great running backs. I had Dave Reagan, Mike D'Alberto ran for 1,400 yards. Andy Mills went to Ole Miss. I mean, he was our fullback. I mean, so we always had a great class, and how it goes, and how I say. Teams around here now, being the AD and watching other teams, it goes in drones, and it goes like when there's a good class down there, like we have like a good 7th and 8th grade class, like that's where it starts to build, and those guys come up, and by the time those guys come up, if they stay together, I mean, it's special. We had it last year with Crestwood had, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 seniors, and there's a big difference when you got a lot of seniors going.
And I saw that in Mifflinburg when Berwick went to play them. And I was sitting behind one of the parents from Mifflinburg, and I said, I never even heard of this team, and they were beating kids 56-0, and like the whole, that whole league, they're beating the whole league, and they said it was 3 families that all their kids are in the right. He's like, it's a perfect storm,
right?
And so obviously the 7th and 8th grade coming up is a team that I'm looking at. My son plays, and there's a nice core there that I'm looking forward to seeing them go and see how far they can go. So now you're in your senior year. You go to your senior year. Did you think of might be going to college at this point, or no? Was college out of the question?
Well, at that time,
so
even back in the 70s, Coach Curry had a tradition like. I can talk about Coach Curry for hours and hours. I mean, the guy was probably the most motivating guy that I've ever been around my whole life. And I've told you, I played for Nick Saban. I've played for all those guys. and he was the most motivating guy, and it was unbelievable. He had average players playing great players playing excellent. He just had a way to do this, so he was always in your head, and that was like the key to get out of Berwick. You know what I mean? That was the thing. Like, football was the key. I mean, if you were a good football player, you were going to get a scholarship. When you go into his office, he probably had, and I think at one time, I don't know how many millions it was, but from all the scholarship, he would have pictures in his office. Right. And they were lined, I mean, all, rows and rows and rows. And it was all the guys that went to college in their college pictures. And so when you go in there, you're looking, being like, that's going to be me, or that's going to be, and where am I going to go? This and that.
But what is that? What is that something you looked at, or no?
Absolutely,
did.
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. I mean, that was your ticket out. I mean, if you were playing and you were putting in time that we did, because you were down there 24/7. I mean, it was all seasons, whatever. I mean, you were down there lifting and doing everything, and then that was your goal to get a scholarship.
Okay, so now, how'd you do your senior year?
So our senior year, we were undefeated. We had 11 out of 13 shutouts. We had a great senior class. A lot of guys went on to play football, but we were, they say that was one of the best teams ever. 1984, and I guess Ronnie's year, they always say then it's hard to put different errors against teams, but I mean, we had a ton of players and really tough guys, and so we were, we start getting ranked because Coach Curry, on the opening games of the year, he started playing teams we played Gonzaga Prep down from Washington D.C. They were a prep school.
That's a question I want to ask you. Why did he go play those people?
Because George, because
St. Ignatius.
First of all, it was. We were 3A. Back then there was only 1, 2, and 3 and 4A. It's not like it is now. It's 6A. So we were 3A, but we played teams in the 4A because when they first started the playoffs, when they first started like states and all that, it was kind of by points. So Coach would play the bigger teams because he would get a ton of points. So when they first started doing it, like, you almost had to be like perfect to get into the playoffs. Like, if you had 3 or 4 losses, you weren't getting into playoffs. I mean, you had to be guys with 1 loss, but it was by like a point system. So he always played a lot better teams. And this way, when we got into the playoffs and when we did that, like, there ain't no better team than Gonzaga Prep or from Ohio, from St. Ignatius. I mean, we had no right playing some of these teams. I mean, these teams are, getting from the whole city of Cincinnati. And here's Berwick playing them, So we won some games, but we took some losses from everybody. But it was an out of season game, and that just boosted. That started getting us nationally. That's how we started getting into USA Today.
Right. I just remember I said, why would they even think of playing?
Right.
Teams but I guess there was a method to his madness.
Yeah, I mean, he beat saying this. Like I said, he just was an unbelievable motivator. I mean, we thought we can play. We were the best things in sliced bread. We were the best things in the country, and it so happened. I think we were like number 5 or 4. Mythically, going in the USA Today, and I think we won our game 41-0. We beat North Pocono. This was my senior year.
Yeah.
41-0 in the Eastern Conference Championship. I think the first 3 or 4 teams lost, and they put us number 1. So that was the very first mythical national championship.
And was that USA Today?
That was USA Today. Yeah.
Oh. So at this point, you win the mythical national championship. Mm-hmm. Now, do you start seeing people coming to your school saying, "Hey, we want Bo Orlando," or no?
Well, it was always. It's so much different now with Huddle and everything. I mean, there wasn't as many films. There was 16 millimeter film, this and that. So what college recruiters would do was they would go to a lot of good programs and recruit kids there. Mm-hmm. And then, George Curry would say, hey, go to Pottsville over here. You got a kid here in Mount Carmel. So they kind of, he kind of took care of some of the spots, and they had good coaches too and everything. And but that's how you would send film in, whether they watched it or not. But just by having a premier program, it's just like Southern right now. Like, everybody goes right down to Southern because they have a great program and they have good players, and that's where a lot of those guys. That's what generates those guys. I mean, they want to go get scholarships, go get free education, and that's their ticket out of there out of a small town.
So what were your options college wise?
So you're allowed to take 5 official visits, and I took I took Maryland, Boston College, Ohio State, West Virginia, and Ole Miss. And Ole Miss. So I didn't play defensive back that much. I was 155 pounds my senior year playing quarterback, but I can run. And I went down to Ole Miss, and they recruited me as an option quarterback. running the back then the wishbone and everything was like big down in the
Right.
SEC.
Yeah.
And so me and my fullback and I went down to Ole Miss, visited Ole Miss, and he actually took a scholarship there and went to Ole Miss. And then I took my visits around. I didn't feel right at, I always tell kids now and I go and I said, listen, you got to, when you go down there, you're going to hang with the players and you're going to be around the players and you're going to associate things from home, familiar things or what you're comfortable. And I said, wherever you feel the most comfortable at, you know what I mean? That's kind of like your spot. That's your spot.
Okay.
So went to Ohio State. Being from Berwick, it seemed like a huge city for me. Their classes are way over there, and it's like a little city. Columbus is like a little city.
Were they Ohio State as we know Ohio State?
I mean, they were the Ohio State.
Okay.
They were. I was, after Archer Manning, they went down a little bit, but they were still Ohio State. I mean, stadium for 93,000. Going in Horseshoe and. Maryland was, I just didn't feel right in Maryland. It's just like there was a little bit more money, like a little higher class kind of didn't feel right, because we grew up with nothing,
Yeah.
And when Boston College was up in Boston, it was kind of a little different. And when I went to West Virginia, it was like, these are my guys from Berwick. Like this, I'm at home, and I still say that today. I said, when I went down there, I was like, this is home away from home for me.
Right.
When I went down to West Virginia, it was the best decision I've ever made.
And then you said, I'm going as West Virginia. You were recruited there, and your coach was?
Don Nealon.
Don Nealon. And he recruited you as a quarterback or a defensive back?
Defensive back. Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't going at 5'10", 155 pounds to be a quarterback.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying.
No, I got you.
I'm just saying, now, did you want to play quarterback or no?
Not really. I mean, I loved quarterback, but I mean, I knew I wasn't going to the NFL. I mean, there's only how many Doug Flutie's 5'10".
Okay, so so you were defensive back in Berwick though?
I played a little bit my senior year because I was light, didn't want to get me hurt, so I would play in the big games. Like we played against North Polk and I had a speedster. We played Harrisburg my senior year, they had a guy named Gene Arrington. He was I think he took second in 100 meters in Pennsylvania, and he went out to USC. He was a wide receiver. So I would play in some of the games. I had some speed, just kind of playing safety, but I wasn't real physical.
So that was a new position for you, essentially.
I mean, I played it all my career. I mean, I always played it, but I never got into games because of my body. But I played it all through junior high and high school. And I had great mentors. I mean, you're talking Keith Seeley and Doug Hinleiter were my mentors, and Keith went on to play at Boston College, and Hindu went to play at God rest his soul. He went to play at UConn. So I had some good. His name is Doug Hinleiter, and he graduated with Keith Seeley. He's 2 years older than me.
I do. Yes, I do.
Doug got COVID. He was living down. He was in the service, and he got COVID down to Florida. And I mean, Doug was a barrel of laughs. Doug was a great guy. I mean, really, really good guy. Do anything for you. And good health, thin, was in good health, and it wasn't he drank, but nothing, nothing like alcohol or anything. And he had, I saw him on Facebook days, and I grew up with his brother, was my age, and Mark posts something on Facebook like, "Hey, pray for Doug. He's in a hospital." Everybody thinks during COVID, is it real? Is it this and that? And God, a few days later, he passed away, and it was for real. And we lost a good one there. He was just a great guy all around, a good football player.
Sometimes when you lose someone close to your age, doesn't that kind of put you back? Like, oh shit.
Well, I got to be honest, and we talk about it all the time. All my friends and I remember, we used to go to college when we were younger and look at all the girls and this and that, and now we go down and who had eye surgery, who had hemorrhoids, who had kidney stones. I had my gallbladder out. Like we talk about those things.
But here's the thing, Bo. Your family lineage, they lived to like 112.
Well,
honestly, think about it.
But my dad's side dies early, and then my mom's side lives forever.
What's your one grandma?
My one aunt just passed away. She was 107. My other was 100. My mom's the youngest, and there's two living right now. The last two are living. Most of the men were living to their 80s. The ladies mostly lived to their 90s. My mom's 90, and my aunt's, I think, 92, 93.
That's unbelievable.
Living. I know. And I'm talking just olive oil, like nothing like watching what you eat, you know. But I think the food was a little bit different and everything now compared to then.
Now, Sister Michael Jean's mother, she had just passed.
She
right?
was the 107.
107, and you would tell me they would play cards and she would jump over the curb.
Well, like there was 4 of them left at one time, and they every like 4 nights a week they would go, and you know, here's my aunt and 100, and Sister Jean would take her. Sister Jean's in her 70s, and they would go like each night and have coffee and you know cupcakes, and they would play cards. And at the end, my aunt couldn't see, and she had her cards, and I would sit in my island. And they would be in the thing, and there would be like 3 conversations going with 4 ladies, and they would just yell and talk about anything, and I'll be quiet, you know. And it was hilarious. Like I should have taped it because, like, you know, we all talk about it. We have a real big reunion every year, or a special ed reunion. We still have it, and it's been going on for 30 years. But like we talk about it, the second generation of how the aunts and stuff were. I mean, we just grew up, and I'm close with all my cousins. Like we're all very, very close, and getting back to, you know, you've asked about my father figure. You know, I've always had aunts and uncles and cousins around all the time. So you know, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be sitting here today and going through my experiences.
Yeah, and that's some of the points that I try to make. Here you are coming from a small town, going to West Virginia. What was your family? What was their thoughts when you was like, "Hey, I'm going to go to West Virginia"? Now, were you probably one of the first to go to college? I was the first.
Okay, not
a
to
big college.
It's a big college, but you know, they went to 2 years. Now, back in the day, you know, my brother went to work. You know, my other brother went to service. I think my sister went to a little 2-year business college, but I was the first one that went to a major university to, you know, a 4-year.
Right.
And you know, it's funny you say this because I when I got out and when I would go speak, I said, you know. Yeah, it was an accomplishment. I said when I graduated from West Virginia, I said I'm the first, you know, one of 7 to graduate from college. I said that to me, like, you can take all the accolades, all the trophies, and all the things I did. I said the proudest thing for me is my diploma sitting on a wall because no one could take that away from me, and that was very, very special to me.
Right, and then So, what was their reaction? He was like, "Hey, I'm going to college." They were obviously supportive.
Right.
Did they ever think, well, maybe Bo will come out, go get a 4-year degree, go work somewhere, white collar job, or did they say Bo's going to go to college, and you went on a scholarship? I would imagine.
Yep.
And he's going to go in the NFL.
Well, I don't know if they thought about the NFL, but you know, your first step of going to the NFL is going to a major college, and you know, I was always successful here in Berwick, and then we went to West Virginia. We had a down year here and there, but you know, fast forwarding forward, we had. You know, usually you bring in, I think they bring in 15, 20 guys a year, you know, and go through, and you probably end up with 10, 11 seniors at the time. We had 20 some 50-year seniors my senior year, and we were ranked. We played for the national championship against Notre Dame, and we were ranked. And I mean, our class was, and that's back, you know, there wasn't much segregation, but I mean, we, you know, to this day, all of us, black, white, I mean, we were very, very close. I mean, we have one of our ex-players down in Florida going through some rough times, and there's black and white. Everybody's guys are helping, you know, giving money down there to this guy, and you know, just giving to. He was on drugs for a little bit, but you know, we got a hold of the landlord, and we give him money for. We don't give him money directly, you know, and but we go take care of his rent, and we do some of that. So we're, you know, that's the camaraderie of everything, and it was just a
you know,
special
that's
class.
something that you know, I can go back to meeting you for the first time when they said, "Oh, Bo's coming in for the holiday. You were coming for the run for the Diamonds." Now, I heard of you from when you played in the NFL,
right?
But when I went across the street to the country kitchen, and I saw your thing on the wall, I said, "Bo Orlando," you know, and I'm like, "Yeah, but he's probably a big NFL guy. He doesn't probably come back home." Totally different.
Yeah.
You come home, you know, you are a regular guy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that amazes me because, and I just had Greg Valentino on here. There's a guy who went, you know, he had a whole huge life, this massive, he was one of the first social media stars.
Right.
Jersey Shore, you know, beat up Marky Mark, you know, all this stuff. And here's a guy who was so down to earth, regular guy. And I'm like, that's the kind of people that I would hang out with. I'd hang out with these guys.
Right.
Because you wouldn't be able to come here and sit in the front of the store and just hang out and do the crossword puzzle every day for how many years doing that if you weren't this way, or should I say the the town wasn't this way.
Right.
It's really different. So when you're telling me about how you helping these guys down in West Virginia and down in Florida, that's believable to me.
I
It's
mean,
believable.
it's something where, and I say that about Berwick. I mean, Berwick's a small town. We don't have a lot going on industry wise and everything. But let me tell you something. I mean, there's a lot of great people in Berwick. A lot of people that when you're in dire need of something, I mean, they raise around. You see when somebody gets their house fire or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's overwhelming the people to this small town. I mean, they really do
incredible.
care. I mean, it's
No, even when I started this, I was like, I don't think I'm going to get 5 subscribers on here because I can't get the audio right. I can't get the video right. Shit's happening. I'm like, boom, it exploded.
Yeah.
And then I have Greg Valentino on it, and then it really starts taking off.
Right.
We have another real good guest coming up soon, other than Bo Orlando.
Yeah.
That's the big one. This is the big one here. So now let's go back to your college. You finish up there almost. You went to you played Notre Dame
national championship.
for national championship. You lose.
Right.
Played. Your quarterback got hurt right out the gate.
Right.
They were trying to put you around different places. It was kind of like not that you were happy to be there.
Right.
You weren't expected to win, I don't think.
Right. We weren't expected. I mean, at the time, there was I think Nebraska was number 3, we were number 2, and Notre Dame was number 1.
Notre Dame was 1.
Notre Dame was 1. Yeah. We were number 2, and Nebraska was 3. So Nebraska was claiming who's West Virginia, don't play nobody, because Nebraska back then it was
they were big.
The program.
It was Tom Osborne.
There, right?
Right?
Tom Osborne. Yep. So that's what we were fighting in for West Virginia, and I still say it to this day. I still say starter wise they could compete with anybody, but when you start getting into their backups, as far as Penn State and Ohio
so you didn't have the depth.
We didn't have the depth.
Okay.
But just you want to talk about I always use the eulogy like playing Army. Like Army or Air Force. Let me tell you something. You might have a better team and more talented, but let me tell you, you're going to come out of there with a little beaten because those guys play hard.
They play hard.
They
very
don't,
hard.
They don't know any of that stuff other than the survival and the things that they do.
And even so, now you put was that on? That was on TV. That was
so every year. All the bowl games would end at all the big games were at
January 1st.
January 1st. 1980, I guess it was 88. Fiesta Bowl was the first time they put it on January 2nd. So now we're everywhere, watched by everybody. All the games are done, and we were the big show. And we had, Major Harris was a Heisman runner-up. Not runner-up, but he was in that group of 5 that went to the show. We had him, and we had a lot of great players. Ronald Turnbull was an All-Pro. Mike Fox played with the Giants for Super Bowl. We had a lot of good players, but
Mike Fox.
Mike Fox was
no
Fox
kidding.
is a good friend of mine. Yeah,
from the Giants.
Oh my God,
no kidding.
He's humongous. I mean, Mike, and you don't play with Mike. Mike has a big family, and they're all big. Mike's 6'8", 420, and you would never even know. He's just a big human being, But so we always say you don't play with Foxy because he just had one speed. He came to us that tall, but he was probably 225 when he came to us. And he played very, very low, and our linemen hated him because he had one speed. He was all the time, whether he was in shorts or anything.
Mike Fox, if I'm not mistaken, he was drafted by the Giants.
He was first, second round.
Yeah,
I think he was second round.
But I can remember Mike. Oh my gosh, I didn't know he played for you.
It's a great story with Fox, and we kid him all the time when we know it. And my one buddy always always instigates him. I'm like, dude, don't play with Fox because Foxy will turn on in a heartbeat. I always stay on the good side, but he's ginormous. But Jumbo Elliott, when he played for the Tuna, when he played for Parcells. When Parcells would get mad at an offensive lineman, he would move Mike over to play over the top of him because Mike didn't take it easy at all. In the offensive lineman absolutely hated Mike because he was full speed all the time.
He looked like he had that look in his eyes.
He's still intense. I mean, the guy's he's what I think he's a year or two younger than me, and he's still intense. He's humongous, but he's on the other side, he's a great guy. You know what I mean? But when it comes to football, you don't play with Mike. You wanted Mike on your side. For sure.
Holy cow. So he was. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, he was drafted out of there. Okay.
Yeah, he won the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
He wears his ring.
Yeah,
he's a really good guy.
Wow. That ends part 1 of the Bo Orlando interview series. There's a 4-part series. This was the end of the first one part. Part 2 will be coming up soon. Thank you.